All right, KMR Rotary, welcome back to the channel. Sorry, it's been a few days. We have been at the racetrack. We've been working hard in the shop, and we're just making things brap. I'll do my best to catch up on some of our recent activities because we got some track footage and some dyno footage and engine builds to talk about. But I figured I'd jump right back into the Rotary technical knowledge and discuss a little bit of why within KMR and within Mazda Tricks and within generally the Rotary industry, we prefer the process of lapping over grinding. And this is the example right here. This came in, and we are going to do our best to save this RX-8 housing, Renesas housing. And if you're familiar with what you're looking at here, you can actually see that this housing has been surface ground. So it's been ground down with a grinding style wheel, CNC. You can see that it's actually got a little bit of a rotational path here. And unfortunately, it's not just that we can see this pattern. This is physically a pattern that we can feel. This whole housing has been left in this rough surfaced condition. And this is my warning, is essentially it's very easy to take rotary components to machine shops. And if you ask them to surface grind them or flatten them out, generally the process ruins or damages the side plates. Rotary side plates not only need to be ensured that they're perfectly flat, but it's also very important that the surface finish itself is actually finer than generally what piston blocks or heads are machined to. And so if it's done to a similar surface finish, the surface finish simply isn't good enough. This isn't going to seal in the water gallery area. You're going to have failure to create your rotary head gasket or water O-ring seal. And the side seals and corner seals are going to instantly be ground down. This would almost be like running those components on sandpaper compared to running them on the OEM surface, which is a machined surface, but it's a polished metal surface. The OEM housings are basically polished. You can almost see a reflection in them from the factory. And if you're familiar with any of our previous videos where we talk about lapping and we're looking at the KMR and Mazda Tricks lapping, the surface finish is generally shiny. And there's other shops in the industry, rotary professionals in the industry that I'm sure will back me up on this. You can just tell by this dull finish, these grinding marks. When you really get down close to it, you can actually see the waves. You can see how rough and porous it is. This unfortunately would not work. So this ended up here at KMR through Mazda Tricks in an effort to basically re-lap. So even though this customer had already paid for surface grinding through a machine shop that guaranteed it would be okay, it's now over with us, and we're going to make a last effort to flatten this back out, and if needed, WPC treat it. Based on the factory specs, it looks like it's had about 3.5 to 4 thousandths of an inch cut off, so we're already well into the nitriding that the RX-8 housings have. So this is getting into a little bit of a riskier usage. This would be, in my opinion, a point where you could definitely at this point cut your losses and just buy a new housing. But for this customer, it's not really an option, and we're happy to do our best to save it. In many cases, these types of housings work out just fine. I'm a big believer that the nitride itself is not a big component to a rotary engine making a reasonable lifespan, meaning lapped components, surface components have been being used for over 20 years in the rotary industry. And over my experience in the past 20 years, we've seen almost zero failures of a lapped component or resurfaced component that was done properly, that was cleaned properly and built to proper specs. So there are limitations. We've only got about another thou or two that I would feel safe about cutting off of this housing. So if within that machining process we're not able to do it, then it's a further discussion with the customer. But we're always doing our best to save rotaries, save the Wankel, save the Dorito. You know, and in this case, the customer's trying to get these components back to flat, back to life. And since we have a couple thousandths of an inch left that we can work with, we're going to do our best to get rid of these machine mark grinding wavies and create a surface that's not only runnable and usable for the side seals, corner seals and components, but also, again, understanding that this type of rough and inconsistent surface would cause a problem, if not short term, definitely long term in your water jacket and sealing area. So kind of, I guess the moral of this brapping story is, you know, try to stick to the rotary shops. There are a lot of good machine shops out there. I'm sure machine shops can do it, but I think it's a misunderstanding of the knowledge that a rotary block actually needs to be excessively flat and excessively smooth in comparison to the general piston machine work that gets done. You can see all of these little burn marks, grooves, just makes me cringe. And it's already started to surface rust. It's only been exposed to air for maybe a week. The housing wasn't oiled. Whoever had it, maybe it was oiled and then the customer wiped it down, which is okay. But another thing to always consider is your freshly machined parts. They're going to rust. So if you have something that's been machined, been lapped, keep it oiled until you're ready to assemble, then thorough cleaning. So, all right. Well, that's a brap. We're back at it. The channel's going. We're going to talk rotary. We're going to talk tech. We're going to talk racing. We're going to talk about Formula Drift. So if anybody has questions, wants to comment on this, you know, definitely we can discuss it. And I think I'm going to get back to work. I got to throw this thing on the lapping table and see how it does. Spending time talking about the brap. Thank you for watching. KMR.